Chlorine is extremely hazardous when it's out of control, a chemical to be treated with the greatest respect, even in the controlled environment of the laboratory. More than 150,000 cylinders and 50,000 drums of chlorine are delivered to users in the UK every year, and another 100,000 tons or so is transported in bulk by road and rail. Yet, despite its hazardous nature, major incidents are rare, thanks to the high standards of engineering and the efficiency of the Chlorine Organisation, sponsored by the Chemical Industries Association and operated by 6 suppliers of chlorine. They are Air Products, the Associated Octal Company, the British Oxygen Company, Hayes Chemical Distribution, ICI, and RTZ Chemicals. They have centres throughout the country on call 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, from which the police, the fire services and users of chlorine can get immediate expert advice.
Can you ring Banks Lane, please? Emergency 2001.
The shift manager at ICI's Runcorn Works is summoned urgently to the phone. There's been a chlorine incident and the chloride emergency plan swings into action.
Hello, Mr. Williams. My name's Arthur Critchley, shift manager from ICI Castner Works at Runcorn. I believe you have a problem with the chlorine road tanker.
We have a tanker connected up. When the liquid valve is opened, gas is detected. The driver says it is leaking from the gland and cannot be adjusted.
It is leaking from the valve gland and not from any of the joints you've made.
Oh, it's definitely leaking from the gland.
You've identified the source of the leak with an ammonia bottle. Okay. Have you tried tightening down the gland nuts?
Yes, everything has been done and it's still leaking.
Does the valve leak when it's closed? It doesn't. Okay, well, can you not close the valve, put the end caps back on and return the full tanker to us?
We need the chlorine, and otherwise we'd have to shut the works down.
Okay. In that case, can you leave the valve in the closed position, don't touch any of the connections, and we'll send an emergency team out as soon as we can. As it's fairly local, estimated time of arrival about 30 or 40 minutes.
Chloride is a cooperative scheme. If the incident had been near one of the other centres, Arthur Critchley would have asked them to deal with it. This one was at a local waterworks, and the Runcorn team was soon on site.
In talking through the problem with the people on the telephone, you have to form an opinion as to whether they are capable of carrying out the simple remedial tasks that you ask them to do, and also whether they have the correct safety equipment and are able to use that safety equipment. If they're at all reluctant to carry out those tasks, then you would err on the safe side and send an emergency team out.
Arthur Critchley has many examples of what can go wrong.
Yes, I can remember an example not too long ago where we had a problem with a leaking chlorine cylinder, and I was just about to instruct the chap to go and cure the fault, having ensured that he had a mask to do it in, when in fact it turned out not to be a gas mask but a simple dust mask, which would have had obviously disastrous results. The lesson is always double check, never assume anything.
Chlorine is an orange-yellow liquid, or a greenish-yellow gas at strong concentrations. It'll remain in liquid form at temperatures less than minus 34 degrees centigrade at atmospheric pressure. It'll change into a gas at any temperature warmer than minus 34 degrees. In a closed container, liquid chlorine will take heat from its surroundings, which will cause it to vaporize. The gas will build up a pressure which will prevent further vaporization and keep the chlorine in a liquid state. The pressure depends on the temperature of the container. If it's cooled to minus 34 degrees centigrade, the pressure in it will be atmospheric. However, if the container is totally filled with liquid chlorine, described as hydraulically full, a new and dangerous situation exists. Now the pressure can build up very quickly. For every degree centigrade rise in temperature, the pressure will increase by about 7 bars or 100 psi. So a rise of 10 degrees would increase the pressure by about 70 bars or 1000 psi, with the dangerous possibility of the container rupturing. To safeguard against this, the containers in which liquid chlorine is supplied have a free space above the liquid of not less than 6% of the volume of the container. This allows for the expansion caused by normal increases in temperature. Chlorine reacts spontaneously with many materials, often violently, as these demonstrations show. Aluminium gives off dense white fumes on contact with chlorine gas and quickly catches fire. Titanium has a similar effect, giving off dense fumes of titanium tetrachloride. Chlorine will corrode most metals, including steel, when moisture is present, and will attack rubber, distending it and making it brittle. Caustic soda is used to absorb waste chlorine, but the concentration of the caustic must not be more than about 20%, otherwise salts will form and may well block pipework. Oil and grease can cause fires when they come into contact with chlorine. Halocarbon oil does not react with chlorine and is one of the few lubricants which can be used safely in a chlorine installation. A fire can have even more serious consequences. Once the temperature has reached about 100 degrees centigrade, mild steel can start to burn, giving off dense clouds of brown ferric chloride. One volume of liquid chlorine will produce 460 volumes of chlorine gas. So very small quantities of liquid chlorine will produce huge quantities of concentrated vapor. Liquid chlorine is about 1.5 times heavier than water, and chlorine gas is 2.5 times heavier than air. So the gas cloud quickly sinks to the ground. In small concentrations, chlorine gas is immediately detectable by its smell, similar to bleach. It causes irritation of the throat, chest, nose, and eyes. At high concentrations of around 1,000 parts per million, the gas cloud begins to turn green, when it can prove fatal. Indeed, at any concentration, chlorine is toxic, so it must be taken seriously, and the appropriate protective clothing and equipment must be worn whenever dealing with faulty valves or containers, or when there is the slightest risk of a chlorine leak. In low concentrations and for short periods of exposure, PVC suits and gloves will give good protection. An approved respirator is a must. In heavier concentrations, or where the concentration is not known, and especially when dealing with liquid spillages, self-contained positive pressure breathing apparatus and fully protective clothing must always be worn. Sometime or another you may be faced with helping someone who's been exposed to chlorine gas, and you'll want to give essential first aid treatment until medical help arrives. Dr. Makepeace is one of the medical officers at ICI's Casner-Kellner Works.
The care of a gassing casualty is broken into 2 stages. The first stage is the first aid that's given at the site of the accident, and the second stage is the care that's given in the medical centre. The care given at the site of the accident is very important. It's very simple and easy to follow, but very important. This will involve moving the casualty to an area of safety where he's out of danger of further exposure, placing him in a half-seated position, loosening his clothing if any of the clothing is tight, removing any contaminated clothing, and reassuring him that medical help has been summoned. This reassurance is particularly important because being gassed is a very harrowing and frightening experience. As soon as possible, oxygen should be administered to the casualty. On arriving at the medical centre, the casualty is received by the nursing officer, and she will make an assessment of his condition and the severity of the gassing. While she's doing this, she will place great emphasis on reassuring the patient. The patient will be very frightened and very scared as a result of the gassing. Any further treatment will be dependent upon her assessment, but in the majority of cases, this will usually involve oxygen administration. Chlorine is an acute irritant gas and has an immediate effect upon the eyes and the respiratory tract, causing irritation and coughing. In addition to that, it can also have delayed effects. These effects may not be evident till a further 24 or 48 hours. Therefore, all patients are warned of this possibility before they leave the medical centre, and in addition to that are given a symptom card. The symptom card carries a list of the warning signs that the patient must look out for over the next 24-48 hour period.
Chlorine is hazardous only when it's handled carelessly or when the simple safety precautions are ignored. It's your responsibility to take chlorine seriously, to treat it with respect and never cut corners. Only then will the high standards of safety be maintained of which the industry is justly proud.